Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to Rome welcome to Rome. We're in Rome. It's Attila Total War, not Rome Total War, but you know, that's sort of the way things are. So, I wanted to do just a quick guide since I just finished beating Attila Total War as the Romans on Legendary. This is, again, on Legendary. You can pretty quickly just tell by going in here and looking at difficulty level, -8 public morale. Public order, which is brutal, but suffice to say, that's just the way it is. Anyway, I wanted to do a quick start up on how to play this game to a certain degree. I mean, if we look here, we can see that we've got ourselves a pretty shaky position. We're not earning, strictly speaking, that much money, and we're pretty badly overstretched. We've got some interesting allies with the Eastern Romans, but we've got a lot of enemies here. We're already at war with the Quadians up here, which is going to be a pain. We've got a lot of potential threats along our borders, and I mean, even up here, these Caledonians and so on and so forth are going to be people who are probably going to backstab us pretty quickly. So one of the first things that we want to do when we're playing this is to go into the diplomacy tab, because this is going to be your most important weapon when you're playing as Rome. Now, people that you can, you should try to get trade agreements with them, and you'll be surprised at how often you can get them. I mean, I might not get very many here, but we should be able to get some. The Gaetulians and the Garmentanians are very important to get trade agreements from, or Mauritanians are important to get trade agreements from. The Geats up here don't look like they're going to be interested, but you might as well give it a try. No. So you get as many of these as you possibly can from these people, and they become ridiculously important to your politics pretty quickly. So these guys, you know, they've accepted our offer. So this is actually pretty lucky, and it's something I'd like to talk about. So down here, we've got these two factions over here, these guys and these guys. If they're trading with us, neither of them are likely to go to war with us. Let's go into our diplomacy tabs here, though. Again, Gaetulians, he's reliable, he's defensive, he's passive, and he admires strong empires. So all of those traits mean that he's a really good trade ally, so we don't ever want to break away from him as a trade ally while we can help it. If we go check over here, the Marians, they're reliable, defensive, they're diplomatic, and they're culturally tolerant. So these people, neither of them are very likely to declare war on us or betray us at any point in time. So those guys are people we can keep trading with for a long time. The Garmentanians as well, they seem to like us plenty. So those are all people who are going to be worthwhile trade partners, and that means that we don't want to be attacking down in that direction. So it's important that we keep those guys as they are. The Abdanians are going to be interesting. I've never actually started off with a trade agreement with these guys before. They're reliable, defensive, passive, and they admire strong empires. So these guys, again, these guys are going to be a wonderful person to keep as a sort of a trade ally. And you can see right away our income has skyrocketed up by an extra 1,000 with a relatively easy thing of just clicking around and going trade agreements. Once we've done that, we want to try and get people into wars. Now, the Alamans won't go into a war, but basically any faction that is not at war with somebody, you can usually go into declaring war against someone else. So these guys dislike Sarmatians, which isn't going to help us at all here. But he won't declare war on the Saxons, so we'll have him declare war on the Jutes. Odds are low for that, so it looks like we want to try and get him to declare war on someone else, and it looks like they just aren't willing to go to war with anybody. They're probably just too friendly with everybody around them, or they're just a bit more passive than it looks like they are. The Bastarnians here, they hate us. Let's see if we can convince him to declare war on the Quadians. No. Fortunately, the Bastarnians are landed, and they're a bit far away from us, so they're likely to run into problems with the Ostrogoths and the Huns before they'll ever be a problem for us. The Caledonians, we could try getting a trade agreement with them, but that's not really going to work. What we want to do is just convince them to declare war on anybody, which we're not going to get. Looks like they're just really not willing to declare wars, which is fine. Let's see here. The Abdanians, if we could get them to declare war against the Quadians, that would be ideal, but we just want them to be at war with somebody. But it looks like they're not willing to as well. Holy crap, people are just pacifists in this game. Alright, so you guys try and get them to fight. Okay, so this one's important. We want the Franks to fight the Saxons, otherwise on the first turn, You basically need that to happen on the first turn, otherwise Camalodunum is going to get attacked by the Saxon army just coming in from the sea. If you've got the Franks engaged in war with them, that's not going to happen, so that's an ideal situation to get into there. The Gaetulians and Garamentanians, you don't want them fighting anybody because they're sort of behind your lines anyway. We can go into the Geats, we can ask them to declare war on the Saxons as well. Looks like they're not willing to either. Holy crap, this is a very pacifist map here we've got. Alright, the Eazages, I don't know who those guys are. Lazicans, Markomans.
My time is better spent feasting and hunting than listening. So be quick with...
Okay, so with all these factions that are going to be at peace, it's going to be a little bit awkward. We don't typically want that to be the case. Okay, so those guys have accepted that, and it's going to make it less likely that they'll declare war on you, and that's the important thing that we're going for here.
Are you brave or foolish?
So these guys, again, we just say whoever, you know.
Before I turn you inside out.
Alright, so that's not going to work, it looks like. And the Visigoths are already at war with plenty of people. So we couldn't get very many wars declared. But, I mean, you want to go through and get as many people declaring as many wars on other people as you possibly can. Next, we want to be going through our buildings tab here, our provinces tab, and we can see the state of everything, and a lot of places are earning us a lot of unhappiness. But it's spring, and that means that there's a discount on our agricultural buildings, so what we're going to do is find our sort of regions here that we can upgrade that with, and we're going to go ahead, undeveloped land, and we're going to go ahead and add a field to here. And we're not going to add anything else for this turn because we can't add another field here while that's going on. We do need 50 agriculture increased here, so we can't quite get enough to fix the shortfall here, which is a real shame. We're going to go to our next building, Belgica. So as you can see, this region over here, again, they need food. This one's going to take a little bit more population to get up to that point, but we can get an extra one there, and it's going to provide 42 food. These values do go down over time, so you will need to keep an eye out on that. We don't necessarily want to take Britannia Superior and increase that, just because it's so poor there. Now, this place is interesting because you can actually fix Carthago Nova through a variety of different methods, but one of the things that I'm going to do is make sure that I'm dismantling some buildings here. And we're not going to bother upgrading a farm because I'm destroying this municipium. This ends up reducing the amount of food consumed in this region here. So that ends up being just fine. The Tabernae is being demolished as well, so that reduces the squalor and public order penalty. And that will be helpful later. Next up, we're going to be going through to Dalmatia. Now, this is where you want in this game to decide if you're going to play as Latin Christians or Greek Roman pagans. If I go through here, I can look at the sort of progression here, and you can see that the Latin Sanctuary is really expensive. It costs 600 gold a turn, but late game you should be earning enough money that a bunch of Latin Sanctuaries is not too cost prohibitive. Now, the actual public order bonus from this is actually pretty low. I mean, it's not the best. So there is that to consider. I mean, there's not necessarily many superior buildings to just put in here for the cost, because like food becomes very much expensive later in the game. So it's up to you to decide what you're going to do, how you want to play it. By contrast, if you look at the higher tier Pentarchy C buildings here, they cost huge amounts of money here. This is like way too much per turn, but we could stick with it pretty easily and just not worry about that. The amount is not the worst. And also it does mean that we do have access right away to these priests, which become quite good later on in the game, quite fast in the game at reducing public disorder penalties. So if you're going to play as Latin Romans, having priests running around increasing the public order of your regions is actually very viable. Italy over here, though, as you can tell, very, very deficit. If I can click on a building here, on food here, so you can see minus 100 here. Part of that's because we've got herbs here. We're going to dismantle those because we do want, again, dismantling also gives you a big influx of money, so that's a benefit to doing it that way. We're going to go ahead and also add in a field there, because we do want to get as much food as possible. And the Colonia over here, we can actually leave that if we want to. The difference between the level 1 and the level 2 is only 10 points of food, so it's not a huge difference. And we don't get too much money for tearing it down into the Vicus. So we could keep it this way. That would definitely be a possibility. I think we will, just because that gives us a little bit of a growth bonus. That's going to help out. Liguria up here. If we look here, we've got a Latin chapel, and this has a divergent tech path. Okay, we can either build these Latin hermitages, or we can build these Latin churches. Now, the hermitage is interesting. It provides sanitation, but only in the capital, which is a problem. The Latin church, on the other hand, it has much higher Latin influence, which is basically a form of public order. But the problem is, if we look here, we are only getting -3 from religious differences. It maxes out at -4, so it's not a huge determinant factor. On the other hand, if we look at our auditorium, we're receiving a bit of Roman paganism, which is being cancelled out by the Latin chapel. So that's part of the problem here, is we want to either completely convert to Roman paganism, or we want to stamp it out completely. So we would have to convert this to something else. One of the ways that we could deal with this place is to actually demolish the auditorium and have it turned back into the forum, which would be a way to get public order from it. But another way is to convert it sideways and turn it into a scriptorium or a tabernae, depending on how we're doing with public order and food consumption and all that other stuff. The tabernae earns you a lot of money. The scriptorium earns you a little bit of money and increases your research rate, which is actually quite beneficial, especially later on in the game. One of the other things that we're going to want to do, though, is start tearing down unnecessary rally fields. So that's going to be something we're going to be doing there. We're also going to be tearing down the herbs that are here as well. So that is going to give us the ability to field things a little bit differently from now on, which is going to be very important for us. So you just basically go through all of your cities and burn down all of the buildings that you're not going to need, which early on is going to be rally fields. You don't need them in a lot of the cities that have them. You just find the cities that do need them, and you try and get your food under control, because when you've got the food shortage, you've got -25% wealth from all buildings, which is a very significant penalty to the amount of money you're making from these places. So we're trying to get that fixed as much as possible. So Magna Graecia, we can look at this place over here, and we can see that here as well we want to convert this to either something else. Either we want to change it into a different building that improves our happiness, or we want to just tear it down completely. And over here, of course, we want to build a farm. So if we were to go Christian in this particular one, we might want to build a church here, but we wouldn't want to do it this turn, because we want to build as many farms as possible in spring when they're 25% discounted. Now, if we look at Maxima Sequinorium, it's got a lot of buildings that you might not necessarily think you would want, but this is a place that you keep the way it is just because it's going to save you time in the long run. This is going to become a key recruitment province, and like, I'm probably going to tear down this garrison encampment, in all honesty, just because I'm going to have armies through here anyway. But this is going to be a primary recruitment province. It's already got supply storage, which lets me get for example, a blacksmith or a carpenter or an armorer. And we've also got this iron smelter. If we look at here, we can get a weaponsmith. If we look at the weaponsmith path, it reduces the cost of producing units from this place by quite a bit, minus 10%. So we could end up getting a fairly inexpensive army here, and then we could also use the blacksmith that's already here, or sorry, this supply storage, and then upgrade it to blacksmith or a carpenter or whatever, and end up with a better army of higher tier units that we could get from this rally field with an infantry grounds or cavalry corral. So eventually we're actually going to have preferably a multitude of different recruitment buildings here, and that's going to be the way this is. And it's going to help us deal with all this sort of stuff up here. So we're going to leave this place as it is. And one of the things you could potentially do is refuse to tax this province, and that will give you a boost of food. Now, we don't need to do this just yet, but what we're going to do is have all of our buildings. I'm going to go through all our buildings. I'm going to take down all of the unnecessary rally fields that are not near the front lines. So if we were to look at there's the rally field, and we do want that. If we go to Sirmium, we can see another rally field there. We do want to keep that as well, because this is another province that is near the front lines of combat. So we want to be able to, for example, bring in some cohors, which requires that building. If I don't have that building there, we do need that building. Otherwise, all we get are Limitaniae, bodyguards. I don't actually want to build these here right now. But if we were to go up here, this is another example of this. We were to go here. We do actually want those up there, so that is fine. But another thing that I want to do just before I do a cut here is to dismantle these armies. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is that it will cause our tax income to jump, and you can see we're over 4,000 now. The other thing that we want to do is combine these two armies together so that I can get this guy to be a governor by recalling him back home. He's got the trader quality, which means commercial buildings are more profitable for him. So that is a pretty good trait. His other traits are kind of meh, but you know, that is the way it is sometimes. And we're going to have these guys join up here. We're going to move all of these units up into this army, making it into one large super army, and we're going to sort of move it down a little bit south to Argumentum, because we're going to try and attack the Swabians, or at least follow them as closely as we can. So this guy we can disband now as well. So that's brought our income up to 4,319. This army over here, we can actually bring down over to Savaria or around there to try and assist, because this is where a lot of the early game pressure is going to be. But yeah, that's sort of the main things that you want to do. Now, if you are not going for Christianity this turn, you want to take all of these Latin baptistries and just burn them down, because you're not going to need them. They're going to be an expensive building to maintain. You get a lot of money by burning them all down. It's just not really worth it. And any sort of capital that is at higher than level 1, you also probably want to take those apart as well, just because like this takes 60 food, the undemolished version is taking a lot less, and the benefits of the level 2 are not significant, especially in the early game. So anyway, we will be back in just a bit. Okay, and we're back. So I've gone through and I've demolished pretty much every building that I want to have demolished, or rather I've had that queued up, and I've got all of my money being spent on upgrading farms wherever I can build them. Now, always start with the tier like 1 farms rather than upgrading your other ones. It's just more cost effective to start from the bottom and then work your way to the next level, although admittedly cows are a pretty massive upgrade over the basic fields. If we were to look here, cattle herd, it more than doubles the amount of money that we'd be getting from that particular field, and it increases it from 50 to 90 food. So that's definitely my favorite sort of increase, this cattle herds. But for now, we're going to go ahead into our faction list here and look at our faction leader. Now, he's got some problems here, as you can see. He's not the best of people, but he does have, you know, good integrity, which doesn't really matter all that much unless I put him into an attacking army. His wife gives him extra personal influence and public order, which is actually excellent. So thankfully his wife is a great person. What we're going to do is we're going to stick him into one of our different provinces. We do know that we're going to end up with somebody who is capable of a little bit better commercial trading, so we're going to end up putting him probably in Insula Occidentalis, so we're probably going to put our Emperor in Magna Graecia, although you can always click the tab button and that'll show you region wealth. Here you can see, if we were to go into trade, commerce total for this place is about 1,125 compared to Magna Graecia. Actually, Magna Graecia is higher commerce, so we'll put our faction leader into Magna Graecia Insula Occidentalis, unless I see a very good reason not to. If we look at our other statesmen here, and the reason we're using these guys is because they are free. Yeah, he has no beneficial, really, anything to a province that we send him to, although it would be nice if the place we sent him to had a church or something. None of the places that I typically send them off to have one, so what we're going to do here is go into our little whatever, and we're going to put this guy into Magna Graecia. And we're going to take this guy and put him in Carthaginiensis. And these are going to be very good money-making provinces. We're going to put them in there because of those reasons. Early on, it's obviously best for us to take bread and circuses, because that is going to decrease the public order penalty pretty significantly. This is what we're going to have to rely on pretty much the game. It is very unfortunate that that is so much better than the other ones in this difficulty, but that's just the sort of fact of things, is that that extra food is even really great late game, even though it's only like 20 per person. Now, we could potentially find 2 new candidates, but we've got these statesmen here that are going to be arriving next turn. patron here. This means that that's cultural buildings. That's going to be anywhere. But then we've got this guy. He's got trader, and he's good looking. So those are going to be beneficial things for him wherever he goes. What is this guy's secondary building? Political animal. Okay, so that combination of things is going to make Flavius Neotaurus extremely useful to us. So the other action that we can do is we can go ahead and adopt Flavius Neotaurus. We can't do that this turn because he's out, so we're going to have to wait until next turn. This means that we're without provincial governors for a turn, and this just saves us a little bit of money getting these two statesmen, because if I tried to hire one of these guys, it would cost us 500 gold, whereas if these guys come back, those guys are going to be able to go there for free. Now, just to explain research, we're trying to increase our productivity for a bit, but we don't want to actually get Imperial Church for quite a while, because this starts disabling our technologies, and we don't want that to happen, so that's going to be something that we definitely want to look out for. So, yeah, that is going to be our turn for now. Let's see how things go as I hit end turn. Hopefully, we're not going to have too many wars declared on us during this turn. Okay, the Abdanians should be okay. Their Caledonians tend to come down here and raid to reduce the cost of their army. But we're going to teach them what the hell that actually means to mess with us in a little bit here. Now, the Jutes we're at war with, but I do often find that we can get peace with them. But this time they're not at war with anybody up there, so the odds that they end up declaring war on us are much, much higher, or rather raiding our coasts is much, much higher. Alright, so we've gone so far without any wars. That's positive. The Swabians haven't declared war on us, which is also positive. Alright, so, you know, nothing too crazy. It looks like people are still fairly passive to this particular playthrough, which is fine. We've got a little bit of raiding. Let's see, the Angles and the Varinians are now at war with one another, which is fine. That's nothing really to concern me with. These guys still at war with the Vandals. We can use that to our advantage later. The Angles, they're now at war with the Varunians, which is bad because now we can't get them to fight the Jutes. The Bastarnians, not at war with anybody. Let's see if we can
you have many
trade that,
pleasantries
change
for me,
that.
but please.
Nope. And again, it's very important that every chance you get...
Attempt to sweeten
Actually, no, we're going to declare war on them anyway pretty soon. It doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, you want to, as much as possible, go through all this.
I trust you come with honor.
And try and make sure that as many people as possible are at war with one another, rather than potentially warring against you.
Spare my ass. Well, why do you trouble my...
Alright. I think these people might just all be pacifists, which is very strange. Okay, you'll get a feel for who should be declaring war, who might declare war, and what have you, but reliable defensive is usually a trait, which means they won't declare wars on your behalf, just because you're asking. So that's always the thing.
Welcome. Speak. Come on. Do not waste time.
Okay, so at this point in time, what we want to do is start following around the Swabians. And we're going to send our army just like right here. We want our army to, at all times possible, be right beside them. We want them, by hugging their army, we can stop them from doing as much sort of raiding or other nonsense. And we can also get ourselves some inexpensive infantry here. So these guys, Dramatic Band, are fairly high quality, and we're not going to worry too much about that in particular. It's just a cheap unit with lower upkeep. So that's a good thing. We're going to move this army over here to Sopianae, and we're going to pick up a couple of these steppe levies, because again, cheap units with low upkeep. So that's going to be a very positive thing. Basically, we're building up our forces to very quickly take out Nitrawa. We want to be able to take it out next turn. We are, in fact, going to go ahead and recruit 2 of these Limitani bodyguards, potentially. We'll see how much money we have after our construction. So you can see that we've got a pretty big pot of money here after our massive burn down of all our buildings. We want to just go through everywhere that we can again. And one of the things that we want to do is look at the situation in the city. You can see here we've got a lot of problems with squalor, so we're going to go ahead and build a waterworks. And this is a pretty poor building in terms of public order. It's only +1, but it also cancels out the -2 from outbreaks, potentially -4 if we have outbreaks in multiple parts of Africa here. So it's a very good building, actually, and we can afford quite a lot of them. And the same thing is going on here. This place could potentially see a -6 penalty from outbreaks, so that would be disastrous. Baetica over here. We could actually control this place without doing that, so we're going to go ahead and do something else for now. We're going to leave that be for now. Let's actually... We could upgrade the farm. That would potentially be a good idea. Right. Undeveloped land here. We're going to go ahead and develop the orchards. I was thinking, it's like, what was it that we do here? That gives us a little bit of a public order boost from the grapes and from the wine that we're going to be making. We're going to demolish this so we can build a waterworks here. From Baetica over here, again, this place we don't have to worry anywhere near as much about sanitation and squalor. We could, in fact, upgrade this to a Latin hermitage. That would give us the sanitation, but it would remove the ability to gain any sort of public order from it. So public order is very important, obviously. We'll eventually want a waterworks, or we could potentially just get the smaller one here. I don't remember what it's called. Up here, we're going to have to just not worry about this place for now. I don't want to invest too much into it. Britannia Superior, same story. We don't want to invest too much money in this place just yet. But let's go down to Carthaginiensis. This place, again, we want to decrease that chance of squalor outbreaks, so we're going to go ahead and waterworks that place. And we're going to be upgrading the buildings here quite intensely, so that's going to be fine. Also, one of the nice things about this early game is that we can start building latrines, and this is going to give us huge growth bonuses. Like latrines +7 growth is going to be quite substantial if we decide that we're going to go down that particular route. Now, if we look at here, we've got plenty of food in Carthago Nova at this point in time, so that's going to be quite beneficial to us. We're going to go ahead and take down this adobe maker, and in 2 turns we're going to replace it with a capital. Dalmatia, I don't feel as though we should necessarily upgrade this place. It's probably fine as it is, I think. Galicia, again, getting down the waterworks is probably fine. Insulate Occidentalis, again, waterworks. And you build and end up building a lot of waterworks. They're very important as a building. They don't cost very much. The maintenance cost is only 25, but the sanitation is quite high, especially in the capital where it's going to reduce it by 5 by itself. So this will actually fix our outbreak chance problems there by itself. Now, over here in Rome, there's not much we can do about it, so we're just going to have to leave it as is. But as you can see, we've almost gotten back into the positive on food. We could fix that completely by adding a saltworks, but for now, what we're going to want to do is hope that we can get the 7 population surplus, which we're not going to. It's going to take for freaking ever, but Liguria over here. Again, you got sort of various different options that we could take for this place. One of the ones that I could do is, well... yeah, you know, waterworks again. Waterworks are a great building early game just because, like, outbreak chance is going to just be ridiculously heavy-handed, and I just hate dealing with constant outbreaks. It doesn't make as much sense in Lugdunum, so we're not going to worry about that. Instead, we're going to build a capital. And you can see that my money's slowly going down, but we still have lots of money. And Lusitania, again, we're going to build a capital. And we could also build something else here if we wanted to. That would actually be fairly reasonably priced at just 3, so we could consider that if we have money left over. Magna Graecia, again, we're going to want to reduce squalor, and that's going to be quite good. We'll also want to eventually upgrade this to a vineyard because that is a very good building. Public order +5, food +50, and we get more wine produced, so it's a very strong building. Maxima Sequinorium, this place is going to be a recruitment capital, so we're not going to worry about what's going on there. And Narbo is actually pretty much happy as it is, so we can leave that pretty much be. We could change this to a scriptorium because we don't want that tracking upwards Roman paganism. We do want to replace that with something else eventually at some point. Maybe, or we could potentially go into the undeveloped land here in one of these provinces, and we could go ahead and change that to a Latin baptistry, and that's just going to counteract some of the public order penalties that we're going to be seeing there. And these buildings are pretty expensive. It's 2,000 for a Latin baptistry, which is kind of ridiculous, actually. I mean, considering how much you're paying in maintenance costs for these, it's kind of silly, but we're going to leave that relatively be for now. Anyway, we still have lots of food problems that we could also deal with, so we could spend money that way. But for now, I think that we're going to be trending towards okay for food. Oh yeah, Pannonia I actually did end up building a cattle herd. The reason is that you can't actually build duplicates of something on the same piece of land. Now, I can upgrade the hunting ground to a hunting lodge here to get even more food produced here, but we're not going to worry about that for now. Right, Noricum, we could add in a farm here, and that is a perfectly reasonable investment, and then not invest anything else for there right now. And Tarako here, yeah, undeveloped land here, we're going to go ahead with the capital. Try and get as many places under, actually no, this place badly needs waterworks. So if we look here, if all three of these are red, that means it's very likely that you're going to end up with a disease outbreak in this province. So it's going to be quite good for us to focus on that. Again, here we've got 3 provinces that have disease outbreak chance at very, very high. So try and get rid of those wherever possible. Now this place obviously is not going to have a disease outbreak. It's got like all green because it's got this reservoir here. Very powerful building for avoiding that sort of catastrophe. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and build a capital here. And then Mauritania, this place also, it's got sanitation problems. So we're going to go ahead and upgrade that. And then we're going to add a capital. So we've spent a lot of money, but we've still got a tiny bit left. And we don't want to spend that, we do want to spend this on building. So we're going to look for places that we can place down 3 more capitals where possible. So we can put one up here. And a capital is a good building. It increases our public order by 3, and it gives us a good chunk of money. And if we look at our upgrade paths, we can either go for a food-free statue, which is public order plus 5, which is quite nice, or we can get public order plus 9, which is massive from a governor's house. It still is only plus 300 culture, cultural income, but it increases the income of every other building in that region, so it's actually quite powerful. Britannia Inferior, these places aren't important enough for me to consider placing those down there. Carthage, we're not going to worry about that right now. I could put a capital in Salona. Actually, no, Salona I could put in Sanitation. Now, one of the reasons that I want to build Sanitation so early is that when I get to improved plumbing later in the game, I want to have everywhere to have a cloaca or an aqueduct network as appropriate. So if I were to look at this building here, these get cut off later on in the game, but they're plus 16 sanitation to all regions in that province. I will no longer be able to build these later on in the game, and that is a huge amount of sanitation. The public order is only plus 4, but it only costs 200 a turn. By contrast, the cloaca is growth plus 13. Now, the way you use the cloaca is that you actually build it up to be a cloaca very early on, and then you switch over to the aqueduct network later on. So that's how that works. Late game, you want the aqueduct network. Early game, you want the cloaca, and then you can swap from one to the other for relatively inexpensive values. But yeah, that's how that sort of works. If we look at our income, we're still earning quite a bit, so I can afford to do some sort of stuff like this. Okay, so that was I at Lusitania? I don't remember what I was looking at. Right. I could really do with some extra happiness over at Insula Occidentalis. One of the things that I can opt to do is tear down this building here. That's going to cut into our profits again, but it's going to give us a big influx of money again next turn. And the other thing I forgot to do, I still have some level 2 here, which I want to get rid of. And that's just going to be because we want the money. I mean, it's simple as that, really. Okay, so basically as many places that I can put into positive happiness, every one of those is going to become a region that I can rely on to a certain degree to not revolt against me. So that's the important thing that we're looking for here. So if we look at Sirmium, that place is not going to revolt, partly because I've got 2 armies there though, so that doesn't really count. But suffice it to say, we're looking for these sort of ways to reduce the odds of revolt risk. And what I'm going to do is actually focus it around Spain, because I don't want to bring people back all the way to Spain from wherever they are. Now, I could actually build a church in Emerita Augusta. That would probably be a potentially good idea. Now the problem with these is that since I'm going Roman Catholic, I don't really want to demolish these forums because they're +3 happiness, but I don't want to upgrade them to the auditoriums either because that increases the Roman paganism, which I don't want since that reduces the happiness of the region. So we're going to have to keep those as is for now. We could actually buy a Latin church. The Latin Christian influence, +6, is actually quite huge. It goes across a very wide area. What I'm actually going to do, though, now that I remember this, is find the Holy See. Where else can I get agents? Carthage, I can get spies. I don't really want a spy right now. Magna Graecia, still spies. I think it might just be Italy that gets me priests, so we're going to go ahead and pick one up. Progressive would be potentially good if we have a lot of other religions running around. We don't want the radical, because we don't want to encourage dissent, we just want to increase our own. Scholaris is actually pretty good, so we're going to get progressive because we've only got 1% left on how much we need. So our priest over here is going to be quite handy. We're going to move him somewhere that's a little bit more turbulent as opposed to where he is now. Lugdunum is probably a good choice. It'll take him a little while to get there, but once he gets there, we're going to put him into this Inspire Populist stance. It's going to increase public order in that region by 3. Actually, no, we could move him to Magna Graecia, and then I wouldn't have to worry about that place at all. Well, actually, either way, what we're going to do here is, again, we're going to dismantle this adobe dryer, and we're going to turn that into a different building that we can use to our advantage in terms of controlling public order. You know, I could actually just recruit another of those priests. I think I've just got enough money. I have. I could get the Scholaris as well, so he's going to move down to that place, whatever it's called. So, lastly, I've got these two governors that I can now add. One of them I'm going to send to Insulae Occidentalis. That would be not this guy. Trader, and he's got authority, so we're going to send him off to Insulae Occidentalis. Okay, and Flavius Nero Taurus. Culture, if I recall correctly, what I want to send him is to Narvo. Let's actually double check here. Where do I have decent cultural wealth? And it's not necessarily your starting cultural wealth, because it's stuff that I'm actually going to be building that's going to apply for that. It's also a question of what can I do to help increase it. Okay, so it's Lusitania that I'm increasing the public order, or sorry, the that of. Now, you could ask, why would I not send him over to like Rome or something like that? The reason's pretty simple. It's because I don't really need that plus happiness or the plus food there, so it's much better for me to pick one of these regions around here and have them focus that area to make it as profitable as possible. I don't really have that many cultural buildings, though, or anything like that, so he's just going to be generic until I get that infrastructure going for me. I'm going to have him go to Galatia because it's a pain to get units there, and because they're quite unhappy. So let's go ahead and have him use bread and circuses, and of course we're going to do the same in Insulae Occidentalis. Now next turn we're going to get another governor, so it's going to be nice to check to see who I have access to here. We're going to get the Scholar, that's going to be another 5% to our research rate. If we look here, we've got a couple bonuses to research, but it's not significant enough that we can actually speed up the process at all. But that is perfectly fine. Now, up here, we're going to have our armies ready and set to attack Neutrawa. We're going to use both of them sort of together, fighting in tandem. And over here, we've got ourselves in position to attack these Suabians. Now, we don't necessarily want to just go out and attack them right away. They are allied, of course, with the Vandals, and we don't want to get into a war with the Vandals too soon. Although, if we do, what we want to do is take advantage of the fact that the Alamans are in a war with them, and then use that to try and get additional funds or something, try and exploit that so that they'll give us something to join the war with them. Once we are in the war with them, we can use that to make our diplomatic ties a little bit closer. So yeah, that is a good way to get a trade agreement or something off of them, I find. Alright, so that is sort of the way things are going for this turn. Now, by the time you've gotten to this point in the game, I mean, I can't do a full playthrough necessarily, but this is kind of how the game looks for a lot of the game. It's going to be like this for a very, very long time. Your friends over in the Eastern Roman Empire, you're eventually going to have to break the alliance with them because they're going to get into a war with somebody that you can't really handle being at war with at the time, and it's just going to be too hard for your political chances, so you'll have to cut ties with them eventually, but, you know, until then, just ride that trade and keep diplomacy with them. It does actually help for your objectives here as well, if you look at this. If you look at this, we currently control 106 because of our military allies, so that is definitely something that's interesting. But anyway, I hope this helped you if you're playing as Western Rome on Legendary difficulty. I'll do another video pretty soon to discuss how to deal with the many rebel uprisings that you're going to be getting doing this playstyle. Because we're not going to abandon territory, we're not just going to leave people to their fates. We're actually going to go ahead and try and defend all of this land, which is going to be ridiculous in a certain sense. But if we look at things this way, you know, I can actually pretty easily defend all this territory by constantly recruiting armies, and you'll see how that works for us. But basically, yeah, don't worry about the rebellions. You just have to learn how to manage them properly. If we look at our current here, Britannia Inferior is going to be our least happy province next turn, but that's fine. We're not going to have to worry about that just yet. We can't build anything new, but that is also fine. So anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.